Welcome to today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro friends. Today we are going to talk about, do we really have to play all these games? And so the reason we're talking about this is because I experienced a couple of situations this past, I experienced a couple of situations this past couple of weeks, but it seems to be something that I've experienced on an ongoing basis throughout my career in coffee. And I don't know if it's something that's becoming prevalent in the world in general, or if it's something that's always existed, but it's something that I've definitely noticed being on the rise. And it's this idea that people seem to think that playing a game in the way that they deal with people rather than just being straight and upfront is the way to go about doing things. And to be fair, there are people out there who are happy to play these games with you. I'm not one of them. I find it quite off-putting, to be honest. And I'm constantly fascinated by the people who do choose to play games with other people rather than dealing really straight and upfront with them. You know, when you choose to play games with people, what you're doing is putting more space between you and a relationship that flows. You're putting more space between you and the purpose of, or the execution of the purpose that you're trying to achieve. So what constitutes game playing in this context? People who don't talk straight, people who insist on lying, people who have a hidden agenda, people who are convinced that the right way to go about getting to an end game is inserting 15 different steps when they know what the end game is that they're trying to achieve. That's what I mean by game playing. People who try and do business with you by having one agenda and coming at it from a completely different agenda. That's not grown-up business. I mean, those of us that are grown-ups, those of us that just want to get about the fucking business of doing business and doing business with good people, we look at people who play games and we immediately think, well, I don't think that you're going to be someone that I can trust. You're never going to get right to the point with me. And that tells me that either you don't trust me to be competent enough to see what you're doing, or I'm just never going to trust you. And I'm never going to want to have to do business with you if it's avoidable. So that's one way and one context of playing games. The way that employees play games is when they gaslight you and when they try and convince you that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Because how can you know when they're gaslighting you, they're making you think like you're a loony and that you've got the subject completely wrong. And you're like, but no, I don't. I'm sure I don't. And they tell you more lies to convince you that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And, you know, till you get to a point where you're thinking, this is really weird. What's going on here? And that's game playing. And I hear from a lot of people in the last 12 months that are telling me that they are hiring more and more people, or they're seeing more and more people that are playing these games as employees. Another one seems to be this idea of people who insist on using social agendas or social advocacy agendas to derail derail the efficiency of a business. And so an example of that is, well, I'm going to use my connection with the trans movement, even though I'm not a trans like even though I'm not trans, I'm going to use my affiliation with the trans movement to derail an employer's agenda. And it's like, I am all for people who have a legitimate agenda and a legitimate gripe with an employer. I am all for you standing up for that and finding a way to bring that as front and center. But there is a way to do that that will get you much further in what you're trying to achieve than a lot of the ways that I'm seeing people do that in the coffee industry. Another thing that I'm seeing people doing is like mobbing an employer. They'll get their friends to mobilize online and attack a particular employer without those people having got the full context of what's going on. That's game playing. That's really game playing, when a lot of this stuff could be fixed by having an uncomfortable conversation, but a necessary conversation that can take place behind closed doors without necessarily needing to be unprofessional about it. I was going to use a whole bunch of other words there, but that's not necessary. It just simply comes down to being unprofessional about it. Learn how to have hard conversations. Learn how to say what you mean and mean what you say, which ultimately is learn how to communicate assertively. And you won't have to play games. You won't have to set out with one agenda and then go around the fucking problem to get to what you're trying to achieve. Why don't you save you and the other person a whole bunch of time and just communicate clearly from the beginning and say, this is what I would love for us to do together. This is what a win looks like for me. What does a win look like for you? Let's try and get to that point, and perhaps we don't have to play the games. And if we don't have to play the games, we can all get shit done more efficiently. I would love to start a conversation about unpacking that in our industry, because I see so many people who don't know how to have difficult conversations and play games because they don't know how to have difficult conversations. But these are conversations that if they stepped into their vulnerability around that, they'd probably learn some shit that would get them a lot further, a lot quicker. And that's where I'm going to leave it on today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro. Let us know your thoughts. Comment below wherever you're listening to or watching this video, and let us know what you think about this. Is this something that you've experienced in the coffee industry or in your life, and how do you handle it? I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Okay, friends, peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing day.